Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where I'm going to unpack the structure of Shirley Jackson's We've Always Lived in the Castle. Now before I begin, I have to give credit to this amazing resource produced by Karen Lynch for Vate. If you're a student who's really looking to push themselves and extend their thinking, I highly recommend you download it. I'll pop the link in the notes below. Now we know that this is a Gothic text. If you want to learn more about that, check out my context and background information video. But this is a Gothic text and it is divided into three main parts according to the tripartite Gothic structure. Now this is a structure that was created by Christopher Craft, and he suggested that a lot of Gothic texts in the 19th century followed this three-part, hence the tripartite structure. And the first part, he claims, first invites or admits a monster. The second part is entertainment. So it's about entertaining and being entertained by monstrosity, and it's usually quite a long middle. And then it closes with some kind of expulsion of a monster and all of the disruptions that that monster has brought. So let's break that down initially, just in a bit of an overview for this text. We have at the very beginning, Jackson admits a monster. Now we're going to dig our teeth into who that monster is in a little bit. Constance is invited to join the world outside of the castle, and readers are invited to speculate on the murder of the Blackwood family. In the middle part of the text, we, as readers, entertained and are entertained by monstrosity, and we'll break down the different types of monstrosity that we see in the text. And then finally, after the fire, the monster is expelled and there are attempts to close off the disruption that's been caused. And in this text, that is Charles, and it's also the threat of the outside world in general. So let's break this down in a little bit more detail. And looking at this first section, the real question that we have in this part is, who is the monster? So here we have the admission of a monster of some kind. We also have this invitation for Constance to join the world outside of the castle. And we know from chapter 1 that she is housebound. She is unable to leave the home, and so this invitation is raised several times at the beginning of the novella, where housebound Constance wants to go into the village. And when Helen Clark suggests that she, come back to the world, she actually reacts quite positively. Merricat is not pleased at all by this. She uses the word chilled. She actually has a tantrum in front of Helen Clark, and she smashes a pitcher. She also makes it very clear that there's some kind of change coming and that she's very unhappy about this. In addition to this, readers are also invited to speculate on the murders of the family, and to dig a little bit deeper into that, you can check out in particular the opening paragraph of the text, where we have that real clue dropped and question marks as the reader about who did the murder. So let's read with the text initially. I think Charles is the most obvious monster here. So Merricat refers to him as evil, a ghost or a demon ghost. She even goes as far as to say he is one of the bad ones. Now I put it to you that he's the change or the threat that Merricat has warned us about in the invitation. And Charles, as a character, represents the evils of patriarchy in the text. Let's not ignore that this lens is really crucial when you are analysing this text, and that understanding this feminist lens is really important when we look at Charles. Charles is an evil character. He wants to take over the house. He even looks like the father, who we know was a great threat to Merricat in particular. Lynch puts it really well here when she says that he represents this kind of greed, that he is this greedy, unlikable character. He is interested in the safe, the father's room, he's obsessed with jewelry and money and the father's clothes. He's also really deceitful and untrustworthy, and we see that most obviously when he pursues Constance. We also know that he is cruel in the way that he treats Uncle Julian, and also in his escalating threats and behaviour towards Merricat. Now, reading against the text, I think you could claim that Merricat is the monster. Certainly a few people have. She murdered her family. It's a bit of a spoiler for you. Hopefully you know that by now. And she also has this really dark side to her, particularly evident in her violent thoughts about hurting other people. We also know that she, like her sister, is the town pariah. They live in this big castle on the hill. No one likes to go there. People are frightened of the sisters. And so in these respects, you could view Merricat as the monster. But, I mean, I put it to you that yes, she's monstrous, but I don't believe in this context and thinking about Craft's model of this tripartite structure. I don't think she is the monster or the villain. I think that she is crucially our narrator, and you know, as much as she is a dark character, I don't think she's overly unlikable. I think as readers, we do root for her. We want her to beat Charles. We want her to be successful in her endeavours. And I think Lynch puts it beautifully in these two passages here that through her narration, we as a reader really adopt an unconcerned attitude towards the murders. We don't yes, we have an invitation to speculate on them, but it's not our main concern in the text. And the amorality of Merricat's world really draws us in. And that while Merricat may be a monster, she's the one that we're siding with for now. And that definitely goes against logic, but I think crucially thinking about that narrative perspective here is really important. So let's now check out the middle, the entertainment part of the text. So this is where it usually entertains and is entertained by monstrosity. So firstly, we have that escalating tension between Merricat and Charles. And if we think of Charles as our monster, you know, he increasingly, his presence is increasingly felt. He is growing closer with Constance, and that's very much a threat to Merricat. He threatens that he'll marry Constance and throw Merricat out. And Merricat really responds to this, and we have this conflict throughout the middle part. She responds initially with denial, then with sympathetic magic. She tries all these different things to try and expel him that way. She then eventually resorts to this really conventional request to just please go away, and then eventually she sets the fire. We also have entertainment in the form of the Blackwood sisters against the patriarchy, and this is really clear with Charles in particular, where you have a battle between Charles and Merricat for Constance's love and possession of the castle or the house. Because he intends to take over as patriarch, you have this real threat of the monstrosity of what that would mean for the girls to again go back to a house that is ruled by a man. We know that that's definitely not what they want. So Charles here can be seen as a representative of the patriarchal order that the girls have managed to kind of blissfully live without for 6 years. And finally, you can also look at the monstrosity of the villagers themselves. We know they have a mutual hatred between the sisters and the villagers, and this gradually reaches a climax in the fire and then the ransacking of the house. Now finally, we have the expulsion, and usually in a Gothic text, the endings aren't super satisfying, but I think in this text, it actually is quite a satisfying ending. We have that fire that I've already mentioned and the village mob, and I think Lynch puts it beautifully here when she says that Charles as a monster has been completely aligned with the monstrosity of the villagers, who ransack the house and are on the verge of actually assaulting the sisters. Both monsters are expelled, the sisters hide out in the woods, and they then move back into the house and live what they call a happy life. The villagers bring food as kind of offerings to the sisters, so we have that relationship kind of repaired in that respect. And life for the sisters is very peaceful and revolves around garden and food. Now the castle becomes this real refuge that the women are able to remain safe in. It's a very feminine, maternal space for these girls, and we see that in the kinds of things that they do, as well as the spaces within the house that they occupy. We also see by the ending a destruction of the house and everything in it that relates to powerful men in particular. The father's room and all of his belongings are destroyed, all of the power and status symbols within the house are destroyed, and the only spaces that remain are the places where the girls felt quite nurtured and safe, like the kitchen, Uncle Julian's room, and the cellar. Now, the novella ends with the destruction of patriarchy. So not just the house, but also patriarchy in general and the male threats to the sisters and their relationship. And I think, again, this passage from Lynch is wonderful. The sisters become fable-like witches, so dangerous that they are left to be alone, so dangerous that it is clear that the food parcels prepared by the women and conveyed as if brought to the house by the men are also a form of tribute to a potent, potentially dangerous force. I think this is really important because you have the sisters living happily without men in a place that has become their own and in a place where they have a form of power over those around them. And the novella ends quite literally with the line, "We are so happy." So very much and literally a happy ending. Now, Course Hero, I wanted to put this passage here word for word. I think it is really brilliant that what survives the fire is Mericat's revenge and the fulfillment of her needs. The sisters live in this safe realm of domesticity, the kitchen, further sanctified by Constance's excellent cooking, which is always for Mericat. Mericat becomes her sister's keeper, boarding the windows, barricading the house to really keep them safe. Each sister embodies an extreme of the split feminine nature, and in tandem, at least according to the narrator Mericat, they are happy. Now, when we talk about that split feminine nature, we've talked about before how Mericat and Constance can be seen as two halves of one whole. And in this case, Course Hero puts it that Mericat is the antic and independent creator, and Constance is the nurturing Earth Mother. And I just thought that was a really interesting way to reflect on the end of the text. So thanks so much. Hopefully this really helped you to understand, break down the three parts of the text, and I'll see you next time. Bye.